Okay, I've started the recording now.
Okay, the meeting is called to order. I wanted to start with just kind of briefly reminding people how they could speak at today's meeting. I believe there's a raise hand feature under participants at the bottom of your screen. You're welcome to use that. You are also welcome to, if there's a pause in the conversation, to just kind of jump in if it seems an appropriate time with your comment or question, kind of like we do at an in-person meeting. If you speak that way, it probably would be helpful the first time at least if you could say your name and what library you're from, in case that doesn't show on your screen. We will also have the chat available, and if you'd like to ask your question or say your comment there, we have Sarah Scodius and Rachel Fisher helping to monitor the chat. So if anything is said or asked there that needs to be brought to the group, they will do that. Also a reminder that I believe everybody is currently muted. So if you do decide to jump in and speak, you'll need to unmute yourself and probably mute yourself again when you're done. I guess that's that. So are there any additions to the agenda? Not hearing any. So we will go on to approving the minutes of our February 12th meeting. Were there any corrections or changes to the minutes that were emailed out? I'm not hearing any. So is there any objection to approving the minutes as written? I'm hearing no objection, so the minutes are approved as written. Next, we have the election of our officers. So of course, we would normally have held our election at our May meeting, which is the last meeting of the year. And since we were not able to hold the May meeting, we asked for nominees by email. We did end up with one nominee for each position, and those are for Vice Chair Sarah Scodius from Northbrook, and for Secretary Ross Shanley Roberts from Lake Forest. So, is there any objection to electing Sarah and Ross to these positions? I'm hearing no objection, so congratulations, Sarah and Ross, on your new positions, and thank you. Okay, up next, we have a guest speaker, Nancy George, who is the Cataloging Services Coordinator from Rails, and she will speak on cataloging services from Rails. Nancy, whenever you're ready, feel free to go ahead.
All right, thank you. So let me share my screen first, okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So good morning, everyone. And I'm very happy to be here with you all this morning. I wanted to thank you, CCS, for giving me this opportunity. I hope you all are keeping safe, healthy, and sane in this most unusual time. Can you say hello to me just to confirm you can hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So we are going to have a great session today. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself. This is me. This gives you a kind of a face to the voice in case you need one or would like one. I'm Rails Cataloging Services Coordinator. I'm responsible for cataloging and cataloging related services to Rails members, including training and coordination of specialized cataloging support. I have over 12 years of cataloging experience in public, academic, and school libraries. So let's get started. And here is my email. You can contact me anytime regarding any cataloging related questions or suggestions. So use that. So let's get started. This is what I hope to go over with you folks today. There will be two parts in my presentation. I would like to start my presentation with an introduction of what is Rails and our services. And in the second part, I wanted to give you a basic introduction to the future of cataloging elements. I promise it's mainly a non-technical introduction. Uh, so let's start it with what is Rails? Is it Swan? Many people ask this question to me. So you might wonder the same. So Rails is a regional library system, a government agency that provides services to libraries in northern and west central areas of the state of Illinois. Rails was formed in 2011 with a merger of 5 library systems like Alliance, DuPage, Metropolitan, North Suburban, and Prairie Area Library System. In Illinois, there are 3 different library system, that is Rails, Illinois Heartland, and Chicago Public Library System. Although the city of Chicago is within the Rails boundaries, Chicago Public Library constitute a separate library system. Illinois Heartland covers southern and central Illinois libraries, and it formed from 4 systems. Funding for Illinois library system is provided through Illinois State Library, and libraries can apply their full membership in a library system at any time. There is no membership fee to become a member, and we serve approximately 1,300 private, public, school, special, and university library members. And this is our mission statement. As a multi-type regional library system, we foster collaboration and resource sharing. So that is our core purpose or our reason for existence. Rails offers a number of services to member libraries, continuing education, delivery, discounts, networking opportunity, grants, and other innovative services to libraries in northern and west central Illinois and beyond. If you are interested in knowing about any of these services from Rails, you can contact Rails, or you can contact me. I can get you in touch with the right person who knows more about these services. Now I wanted to talk about the cataloging services from Rails. One of the main areas we focus on cataloging services is training. Free cataloging training courses are available to staff from all Rails members. Training formats include in-person classes, presentation, and webinars. We created a basic training curriculum, and we offer this training quarterly. This course is designed for participants who have a little or no cataloging background. These courses provide practical hands-on training needed to succeed in cataloging and classification of print books. Originally, these courses are offered as a 2-day in-person session in different service areas of Rails. Due to the current pandemic, we are offering these courses online as a series of webinars. The classes will be listed in L2 as they are scheduled. If you don't have an L2 account, please contact Rails. We will help you set up an account. In addition, we will be offering supplementary single sessions on different cataloging related topics through webinars and presentations, usually by outside presenters or by me. Next month, on September 22nd, we are offering a webinar on cataloging ethics by Dr. Karen Snow. You will see that announcement soon. Advanced courses are also coming. Rails is always looking to expand cataloging training opportunity that we provide to our members. So if there is a cataloging topic you would want us to offer to our members, please get in touch. So we will try to offer that courses to you. In terms of cataloging training, I wanted to point out another great resource, that is the Cataloging Maintenance Center. I hope many of you are familiar with Cataloging Maintenance Center. If you are not, it is the statewide cataloging support for Illinois libraries. They offer cataloging services for local authors, and they provide, they offer webinars and trainings online. So although CMC, that is the Cataloging Maintenance Center, is operated by Heartland Library System, the service from CMC is available to all Illinois libraries for free. So you can make use of their free service. I just wanted to point out that resource. Apart from training, I am participating in cataloging related activities for Find More Illinois and eRead Illinois platforms. I hope many of you are familiar with this. If you are not, if you need information regarding this service, you can contact us. Consistent cataloging practices is among Rails members is another area we are working on. Cataloging Working Group of Illinois created a document on consistent cataloging practices among Rails members. You can find this document on our website. Also, the link is here. This document can help Rails libraries and consortia in finding opportunities to tune up existing cataloging standards and practices, or to develop new consistent practices in areas that are not currently not standardized. Specialized cataloging support to member libraries is another area I'm working on. We are in the process of investing the possibilities of these services. We recently surveyed Rails libraries to find out their needs, and we are still in the process of analyzing the results and determining the strongest message from our members. Our plan is to establish a centralized cataloging center, particularly when original cataloging or word language cataloging is needed for our member libraries, like an outsourcing option for free. Things are going slow pace right now due to the current pandemic and other budget concerns. Once we implement it, we will provide you the details to our members. Cataloging mentorship program is another area we are working on. You will get information once we implement on that service. Now I wanted to talk about what are the steps you should take in order to get the most out of Rails. First, I would recommend you to create a login on for L2 if you don't have one. So the next one is Rails e-newsletter. Any staff member can sign up to receive e-news. It is the primary way Rails communicate with our members. All staff and board members who are interested in what Rails offers can receive e-news. Also, you can participate in Rails email list. We have a wide variety of email lists serving libraries across Illinois. These lists include job-specific groups like technical services, youth services, programming, and many more. So participate in that email list. And another area I wanted to mention about is the Rails continuing education. With your L2 account, you can sign up for Rails live or archived webinars. Now I wanted to mention about the COVID-19 pulse page. I hope many of you are now familiar with the COVID-19 pulse page. We use this pulse page to keep our members informed about the latest development with COVID-19. Rails Technical Services Networking Group is a place to network with your tech services people. It is a great place. It is an informal group that discusses the latest issues in cataloging, processing, collection management, and more. So they use, this group use Rails Technical Services listserv to communicate, and it's a great resource for the technical services people. That's all for Rails services. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? I cannot see. Are you seeing any questions?
There's no questions yet.
Okay, thank you. So now we are going to look at some of the changes that are coming in the cataloging world. So some of the new elements that are being developed. First, I'm going to talk about whether this cataloging actually does have a future. Then I would like to talk about how catalogers should respond to these changes. Then I wanted to wrap up my presentation with a discussion on challenges to implement these elements in cataloging. So first of all, I just wanted to add a disclaimer right here. If you think that because I am the one doing this presentation, that means I'm very knowledgeable about these things and I understand all these new concepts, that is not the case. What I'm telling you today is pretty much all I know from what I've read and looked at. So these are all things that are new and we are all going to be learning about this together. So, does cataloging have a future? I believe cataloging does have a future. There has been an idea that because of the internet and search engines and keyword searching, that cataloging really isn't needed anymore. But I don't agree with that. I think there is always going to be a need for information to be organized and for to be findable, which is what cataloging does. But cataloging has changed along the way. Back in the day, you know that when books came in, it was just written down in the ledger. But at the time when time went on, people started typing the actual manual catalog card, filing them in an organized way. Then in 1960s, MARC developed, and it is the computerized framework that allowed bibliographic information to be presented in an automated environment. And it also make it to searchable and able to be edited. Then we have today the online catalog, which of course are much more sophisticated and it's going to continue to change. So my point is cataloging is evolving. Although I would say that evolution has been at a relatively slow pace compared to other advances in technology, but it is continuing to evolve. So change is inevitable and it is constant. So before we can really talk about what are the future elements of cataloging, we have to know why we need a new way to encode and share bibliographic information about our collection. For years, I've been confronted by non-library people about the relevance of libraries and library catalog in particular in this digital era. I was asked what is their usefulness when your huge library data cannot interact with web. Most of the time I tried to answer them and I convinced them that the libraries are still relevant, and that is absolutely true. But the real problem we are facing, we don't expose our collection very well on the web, and we are still using MARC that has been developed in 1960s, and we know that it has really been widely used by libraries nationally and internationally, which enabled the maintenance of bibliographic records. But there are problems with MARC. It cannot integrate and engage with web, as you know. It is not used outside of libraries. MARC is highly structured to the point where limited framework and less flexibility. Also, much of our library data stored in proprietary databases like ILS or digital repositories. And web search engines cannot index this data. Right now, the information found in library catalog is generally human readable and understandable. It is not optimized for computer understanding. That means our users cannot discover much of our library content on the web. We all know that people begin their search on the web, not visiting a library page or our catalog. So let's look some of the things that are shaping the direction of cataloging as we move forward. First, I wanted to talk about the new RDA Toolkit. I hope you all know that RDA is the guidelines and instructions for creating a library metadata. These metadata are intended to support the discovery and identification of resource in libraries. So RDA steering committee is responsible for RDA Toolkit. So they've been working to better meet the needs of its user and play a more productive role in their work. So in 2018, they started a project called RDA 3R. You might wonder what is this RDA 3R? Is the RDA restructure and redesign. So why we need a new RDA toolkit? The original RDA toolkit was published in 2010 and have not gone a significant redesign since then. It is beyond time for a redesign to meet the accessibility standards, as you know. And you might also notice that the current tools for searching and customizing your user experience are insufficient and unreliable. So another reason is this project is internationalization. This project started because of library reference model. It is a conceptual model developed by International Federation of Library Association and Institution, IFLA. So this RDA is moving toward the linked data technologies, and it will be using data elements and relationship and identifiers. So this new RDA toolkit is not ready. It's still in beta release. The final version have to be approved by RDA steering committee. And we received the date. It's going to be official in December 15, 2020. That will be soon, but it will take time to implement this new RDA toolkit by LC and other libraries. So you can look at this new beta side of the new RDA toolkit on their website. And here is an example page from the site. I hope you will find that it looks and work much more like a web page instead of a giant technical document that someone published online. It laid out differently than what we've seen in current RDA toolkit. So feel free to explore, and there is a place on the site you can provide feedback to them. They are welcome that feedback, so just look around. And this new site add greater flexibility and utility to RDA toolkit's display of instructions and RDA related documents. So I'm not going to go in detail about this new RDA toolkit. I just wanted to give you a heads up about this new development. And there is a lot of information available on RDA YouTube channel. I would recommend you to go and look that channel and stay informed. So in summary, remember there is no changes to your current cataloging work while we are cataloging using the original RDA. LC and PCC will be working on policies for new RDA toolkit behind the curtain, and there will be a future presentations about this new RDA when it's ready. So stay tuned on their site. Also from Rails, we will be offering training on new RDA as well. The basis of new RDA toolkit is library reference model, as I mentioned, which was created by IFLA. It is a entity relationship model. I'm not going to explain what is this entity relationship framework right now due to time constraints. This is actually consolidate three current conceptual model, the Ferber, Frad, and Frasad. It is based on 5 user tasks instead of 4. The find, identify, select, and obtain. The 5th one is kind of new one with alarm that is called explore. And their definition is to discover the resources using relationship. So I provided you a link if you are interested in learning about LRM training from LO's Library of Congress. So this is a great place, but it's not that easy to understand LRM, but it is good to know about LRM since we will be transitioning our RDA into RDA with new RDA, because that is the basis of this is the basis of new RDA toolkit. Remember when we were talking about the 5 user tasks under LRM, one of the was the explore, which was to discover resources using relationship between entities. So linked data is a way of doing that. Linked data is a best practices for publishing and connecting structured data on the web using triples. So right now, when you are, if you are on catalog, you click on a link on author's name, and it's going to take you to other resources in your catalog for that author. With linked data, if you click on the author name, and it can take you to other places on the web that have information about the author or other resources related to that author, maybe the author's website, or maybe Wikipedia entry, or about the author, or some other entry about that author. So linked data is described as a set of best practices required for publishing and connecting data that is structured in a way that machines can use it. These pieces of data are represented by a by what is called Uniform Resource Identifier, that is URIs. We are all familiar with the URLs. URL is a type of URI that identifies a website. But URI can identify a person, it might be an idea, so any entity. So then the relationship between one piece of data to another. So those relationships are recorded using what is called RDF triple. I'm not going to talk about RDA triple right now because it's too much technical stuff. So my point is, linked data is all about building and encoding relationship between entities. So the computer can understand and make sense data and its relationship. This is a simple example of linked data. I don't know how many of you noticed the knowledge graph from Google. In the screenshot, you can see Google has pulled out semantically the relevant information about Charles Dickens' books and put it in an information box that shows up alongside with search results to display useful metadata like biographical information sources who publish their data as a open link data. Imagine if a local library holdings displays as a search engine results. That is the promise of linked data, but there are some challenges to implement that, that process. Here is a diagram of linking open data cloud diagram, and it uses the linked data principles. And here is the center is DBpedia. It's like the linked data version of Wikipedia. The colors on the diagram represent broad topic areas, and the library and information, library and cultural institutions are in the green area. The LOD project is actually made data freely available to everyone. So, for example, with LOD project, when we update an authority record, that information will automatically update link to the LOD cloud. So this increased the exposure of library data to the broader link global community. This adheres to one of the major principles of linked data, to provide useful link to other databases. Libraries around the globe have begun to recognize the value of linked data, and there are already a number of initiatives under the way that helping libraries leverage the semantic web. So you might notice the WorldCat has linked data. Another OCLC resource that have been released as linked data is FAST. That is the faceted application of subject terminology headings. Is derived from Library of Congress subject heading. So they are released as linked data. Another OCLC resource that have been released as linked data is Virtual International Authority File, VIAF. They are providing unique identifier links the authority records of national libraries throughout the world who have submitted their records to VIAF. Library of Congress authorities and vocabularies are also linked in the LOD cloud, and LC provide a search interface so you can access their unique identifiers. I don't know how many of you noticed Wikipedia provides the VIAF and National Library identifiers are now available in Wikipedia. When you scroll down, very bottom of the Wikipedia page, you can see this identifiers from VIAF. Sorry. Okay. Library of Congress realizing the library metadata is not relevant to the linked data environment, and they has made significant move towards embracing linked data. That is the Bibliographic Framework Initiative. Their goal has to translating the MARC format to linked data model without sacrificing the details. The BibFrame will allow search engines not only to find information within the records, but to do something within that information. For example, if a user were to do with a Google search by Great Gatsby, search results could provide information that libraries already collect and manage that is not currently exposed on the web. Links to the author, publisher, and other relevant information such as resource location, possibly even down to the branch and call number, could easily be and immediately accessible to web users. However, BibFrame are still in work in progress. The illustration of this is the illustration from Library of Congress, which many of you already seen. This BibFrame model 2.0, it is organized into 3 categories. I'm not going to explain everything here. Their goal, instead of bundling everything neatly as a record and potentially duplicating the information across multiple records, BibFrame model relies heavily on relationship between resources, like work-to-work relationship, work-to-instance relationship, and work-to-authority relationship. So it is a collection of linked data applications, and each one is identified by URI, that is the Uniform Resource Identifier. So what you see in this slide is a small portion of RDF graph, resource description framework graph for one of the MARC record. The record was downloaded from OCLC as a RDF file. The record was then converted to BibFrame record using MARC edit. It was opened in Notepad and copied and parsed using RDF validator, which produced this graph. I did not do that. I actually downloaded this from BibFrame site. So with this RDF sterilization, they are providing the means to connect the bibliographic information to the LOD cloud. This is one way for us to do this by connecting our records to the global web of data. So why should catalogers care about this linked data and these new developments? There are definite advantage to libraries using and sharing linked data. When data is made available in common linked data formats, libraries no longer have to reinvent the wheel by creating the same data over and over. As catalogers, we already use linked data behavior. Behavior means we do the process, but we are not quite doing the linked data itself. So I say this is the linked data behavior because we use names and subject heading links to the authority file. So when you are working on a MARC record, you put your, excuse me, 100 field and you put in person's name. You put in that person's name either based on an established guidelines because you know how you should do it according to RDA for name guidelines, or you're going to do it the authority file. You're finding that person's name and you are actually putting that version of that name. So it will be then match against the authority file. So link data is actually, that's what link data is doing. It is reusing the data. By leveraging this link data technology in our catalog, it will really enrich resource description, expose our metadata to the web, and further enable the library users to unlock our hidden collections by exposing our relationship their relationship in a meaningful way. So there are some challenges to implement. So one of the biggest challenges would be the legacy of MARC records that we have. We are going to need to switch from MARC record, and then we will be in transition. Transition takes a period of time. It won't done it at a flip of switch. It is expected that MARC records and BIP frame records will coexist in a period of time. So to help with this process, Library of Congress is developing different tools. There is also change in skill set in case of catalogers and metadata librarians. We need to begin think in data rather than a MARC record. We need to pursue training that enables us to conversant basic discussion on linked data, RDF triple, and BibFrame. We have to know the basic understanding of this conversation. Also, we need to play by the rule of the web. Vendor cooperation is another challenge. Google algorithm will also be a challenge. While I was preparing this presentation, I talked to some of the librarians who published their catalogs on the web as link data. They have found that they've seen an initial spike in their catalog usage, followed by a drop back down to normal levels. It is believed that the initial spike happened when Google first crawls and indexes the catalog information. This information then becomes more prevalent in search results. However, because library catalog don't change very frequently, search engines like Google devalue the catalog data, which then place them further down on search results. As you know, catalog records are created and then most of the time left alone. So they are infrequently updated, which is a bad thing to Google's ranking algorithm. Hopefully there might be some technical application would be there to overcome this issue, I believe. So in summary, at some point, I would say in 10 years, Library of Congress will decide to stop using MARC and create records with solely BibFrame. So library data will be less siloed and we will be using more standards that are compatible with web. Catalogers have to think about our metadata fitting to a larger ecosystem of the metadata beyond libraries. So as catalogers, we need to expand, set competencies and skill to respond to the swift change today and tomorrow, to improve the cataloging process and efficiency, and to enhance bibliographic access. So that's what I have for today. And are there any questions or anything you have? These are the resources I used to create this presentation. Are there any questions?
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat.
Okay. I know it's very new, so and I'm giving you very basic level information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank you, everyone, and all the best, all of you. Stay safe and stay healthy. And have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Okay, we will move next to CCS report. And Rachel is up first.
Yes, we do have a question. Can we get a copy of the slides for the links? So yes, we will send out a copy of the
Yes.
slides, and we'll provide the links to access them in the minutes and to the CAT listserv. So I'm going to now share my screen. One moment. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to begin with a update on the Polaris version 6.5 that we just upgraded to. So there are new manuals that have been released for version 6.5. The links to download the manuals will be in the minutes. The majority of the Polaris 6.5 updates do not affect cataloging, but some of these do include preferred name fields for patron records, the ability to cancel holds that have a status of shipped, and the addition of outreach services to LEAP. Related to cataloging are the MARC format updates that were included, which consist of updates numbers 27 through 29 that are found on the MARC standards page. Oh, it just switched away from PowerPoint. 1 second. Update 27 includes new subfields 251 for, new fields 251 for version, information 341 for accessibility content, and 532 for accessibility notes, as well as some new subfields for accessibility related languages for the 041 field. Update number 28 added new subfields for the 540 field for terms governing use and reproduction, and the 506 field, which is the restrictions on access note. Additionally, the subfield 2 for source of a heading or term has been added to authorized name and title fields. Update 29 added a new subject heading field at 688, which is for times when an entity is unspecified. This was actually created for the German National Library, and they don't expect North American libraries to use it, so I do not recommend ever using this field. And some additional subfields for the 041 was also added. Updates 6.6 and 6.7 will be a lot more interesting. So by the end of August, the ability to check in serials will be added to LEAP. However, CCS has not decided when this upgrade will be implemented. I'll make that decision after the Palatine and Grays Lake migration has been completed. So then by the end of December, update 6.7 will implement the bibliographic record bulk changes and copy cataloging to LEAP. So I'll be creating new training materials as these features are implemented, and we'll update you when we decide to implement these upgrades. Project OM is the next on my list. This is an open source application that has been developed by the staff at SWAN to replace TMQ's application for updating OCLC holdings. Since March, Bob Barth and I attended several meetings organized by SWAN on the development and testing of Project OM. The development and testing process has gone according to plan. The last TMQ data load was in June, and SWAN then tested our file during the end of July. The testing process was successful and the holdings were properly updated. Project OHM will be processing our OCLC holdings updates from now on. The staff at SWAN do have plans to develop an interface for a web application that CCS staff can interact with and a process for holdings reclamations. So a meeting is scheduled for September, and I am hoping that we can learn more about SWAN's plans for reclamation processes at that time. And I'll let you know when we would be able to have that capability in Project OHM. So SCRAP did have a meeting on July 29th. The minutes of the meeting are on the CCS webpage. So last year, 2 wiki pages were created that SCRAP needed to review. They were one for the Wonder Books and Box Books, and the other for Library of Things. SCRAP reviewed the pages and discussed changes that needed to be made so that the pages only contained the relevant local practices. So I already completed the changes and sent out the link for the Library of Things page to the CATS lister, but SCRAP is still discussing how the edition statement for Wonder Books and Vox Books should appear in the 250 field. So next, the group discussed the UX recommendation to approve the removal of the magazine link from the brief display of serial records in PAC, and SCRAP agrees that this should be removed from the brief display. Regarding this topic, SCRAP reviewed a report of 856 fields via email via the SCRAP listserv of the invalid URLs, and they do plan to update the invalid URLs in bibliographic records. So in December, the RDA Beta Toolkit will become the real RDA Toolkit, and I will be working on updating the RDA numbers in the catalog wiki with new citation numbers and URLs at that time. But before then, if you want to explore the beta toolkit, you can use the old RDA rule numbers that are in the wiki to search for them and see how the new pages look. The LCGFT has established novels of manners in place of Regency fiction. SCRAP discussed if Regency fiction should continue to be used as a local heading while also using novels of manners. SCRAP decided that the issue should be discussed at PASS due to the user's interest in searching for Regency romances. Sandra Desio and Lynn Rubio will bring the topic to the next PASS meeting. Next on the list was the SCRAP discussed the issue of reminding members of local practices. So John LaValle will be reviewing the catalog wiki for updates to local practices. He will be facilitating the discussion on minor issues via the SCRAP listserv and make a list of topics that should be handled in the meetings. And I will be working on creating an online course for local practices. Quarterly reminders of local practice topics will be included in CAMM agendas, and updates to the catalog wiki page on the country of production were also discussed. It was decided that points that were not relevant to Polaris should be removed. So this will be a very busy year for SCRAP, and we'll be making a lot of updates to the catalog wiki throughout the year. So feel free to attend our next meeting in October, even if you're not a member. We had a pretty good size attendance of non-members, and everyone is welcome. Before I move on, we do have some comments in the chat. It's not popping up since I'm sharing my screen. Does anyone want to repeat the questions if there are anything?
Yeah, I can, Rachel. Anita from Lake Villa had just commented that they are making use of the new setting in item records to limit holds to their patrons for the first X number of days of first available. They're using 14 days for new books.
Okay, great.
That's another setting people might want to look at in the latest update.
So next on my list is character encoding. This would normally be in the business section, but in order to limit moving back and forth between people, I'll be speaking about it now. So an issue was brought to my attention of inconsistencies of the character encoding of the bibliographic records and a question of if it mattered. So character encoding is used to support diacritics and foreign characters. There are two types that are possible for bibliographic records, Mark 8 and Unicode. Polaris is Unicode, but is capable of displaying both Mark 8 and Unicode. However, the Z3950 settings are currently set to import records encoded as they come in, which means that the Z3950 connection actually imports OCLC records as Mark 8 instead of Unicode. This can cause display issues for non-Latin characters that do require Unicode, especially when the code in the leader is changed to an encoding scheme that doesn't match the encoding that the record was imported as. So when working with foreign languages, it's important to check that the diacritics and foreign characters display properly after a record has been imported. This first example of incorrect characters actually demonstrates how it would appear if a record was imported into Polaris as Mark 8, and then the character encoding was changed to Unicode after it had been imported to Polaris. So in order to ensure that the non-Latin characters display properly in the pack, it's important to not change the Unicode setting in the leader after it has been imported into Polaris. And the best practices are for these records are to export the records from Connexion so that you can control the character set and how it's encoded when it's exported from Connexion and then imported into Polaris using the import profile. So in order to verify your settings in Connexion, you can navigate to the options screen via the Tools menu and then click on the Export tab. Record characteristics will open the record characteristics setting. So the record standard should be set to Mark 21 and the character set should be set to UTF-8 Unicode. There is also an option to search the Library of Congress UTF-8 records via Z3950. This will ensure that the foreign language records will be imported properly via Z3950. However, the Library of Congress will have less foreign language records than OCLC will. For example, I looked up Harry Potter in Korean and couldn't find any Library of Congress records, so you would have to bring that in from OCLC Connexion. If you do have an interest in switching from using Z3950 to Connexion and do not have experience using Connexion, feel free to contact me via the help desk and I can give you any assistance that you need in setting up Connexion and making sure that your import profiles are set up properly for importing records from Connexion into Polaris. Does anyone have any additional questions?
I'm not seeing anything from chat, Rachel.
Okay, great.
So thank you for that report. Next up is Deborah.
All right, I'm up. So let me go ahead and share my PowerPoint. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, here we go. Okay, can you guys see my PowerPoint here? Yes, okay, I see a nod from Jamie, so I'll go ahead. All right, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was our upcoming edition of Palatine and Grays Lake. So it's hard to believe that September is already here, but our 2 new libraries will be joining CCS in less than a month. So I'm very excited about this. I see a woohoo from Karin in the chat, so I'm glad that you guys are excited as we are. So I wanted to review the go live schedule with all of you in advance and give you the opportunity to ask questions if you have them, since it is creeping up on us very quickly. Okay, here we go. So the go live process will start on Wednesday, September 2nd for Grays Lake. On Wednesday, September 2nd, after Grays Lake closes for the day, Innovative will pull their data from their current ILS of TLC. So at that time, Grays Lake will stop working in their current ILS and they will move into Polaris offline at the start of day on Thursday, September 3rd. Allowing Innovative on Thursday to begin to process and prepare their data for the eventual data load into our database. Now on Thursday, September 3rd, after Palatine closes for the day, Innovative will pull Palatine's data from Sierra. The following day, Friday, September 4th, Palatine will begin using Polaris offline, and again, Grays Lake will continue to use Polaris offline on Friday. On Friday, CCS will begin doing a lot of preparation for Saturday's offline for all CCS libraries, including copying production over to the training database. After our libraries close on Friday at 9:30, we'll also be redirecting SIP and PowerPack over to the training instances of both of those services. Similar to what we've done for our past two library editions of Indian Trails and Morton Grove. Now on Saturday, September 5th, all CCS libraries will move offline. CCS libraries will remain offline through Labor Day, which is Monday, September 7th, and likely will remain offline through Tuesday, September 8th as well. Initially, we had planned for CCS libraries and our new libraries to come back online on Tuesday, September 8th. However, during the test data load, Innovative timed every step and found that it would take approximately 71 hours to complete every phase of the data load. So that would take us right up to 9 a.m. on Tuesday without allowing any time in between each step of the process for Q&A and a little bit of downtime for Innovative between steps. So we would not be ready to go live at the start of the on Tuesday. So most likely libraries will remain offline all day on Tuesday. However, if we get the database returned back to us on Tuesday before 5 o'clock, we will allow CCS libraries to come back online a little bit early. We've done that in the past. Libraries have expressed a preference to come back online as soon as possible, even if it is in the middle of the day. So if that's an option, we will let libraries come back online on Tuesday, September 8th. However, we are marking Wednesday, September 9th as our official go live day for CCS libraries, as well as Palatine and Grays Lake. We expect that we'll be online at the start of day on Wednesday, September 9th. Okay. I'm not sure if there are any questions in the chat. If there are, Jamie or Rachel, would you be able to read them for me?
I don't see any questions.
Okay. No questions. So this migration will be a little bit different for our for technical services staff, because the downtime is falling not just on a weekend, but also it will fall on a weekday on Tuesday. So while we are offline from Saturday through Tuesday, know that you can't do any work in our production database. The production staff client will be offline and unavailable to staff. We will be having an offline webinar. We'll share that registration link in Friday's CCS News. So during that webinar, we'll review Polaris offline circulation, and we'll also just briefly review the schedule as well. And we'll be sharing additional details in the upcoming CCS News between now and September. I feel like we're all experts at this by now, though. Okay. All right, well, that was my update on the Go Live schedule. The next thing I am slated to talk about is an overview of our new training interface that we created for the Palatine and Grace Lake migration. So, as you all know, COVID is happening in 2020. So unfortunately, CCS was not able to train Palatine and Grays Lake staff in person as we had with previous library additions. So member services staff worked very hard in April, May, and June to create new virtual training content to onboard staff at our new libraries. The perk of this is that now all of CCS can benefit from the training materials that we created. So we've set up a new training website at training.ccslib.org that's accessible to all staff at all libraries. We've created 4 training tracks for library staff: Technical Services, Public Services or LEAP, Interlibrary Loan, and Power Pack. Each of those tracks is divided up into multiple courses that cover a number of different workflows and tasks. The technical services courses are broken down into an intro to the client, cataloging, serials, and acquisitions. Now, as you can see here, I've noted the estimated time it takes to complete each of these modules. So you can see acquisitions takes about 4 to 6 hours to fully complete. So these are not just basic overviews of the functionality of Polaris. These are in-depth courses that you can use to train staff and onboard new staff to your library. Each course is broken down into multiple lessons, and each lesson is comprised of a number of different elements. These include videos that provide an overview of the different workflows talked about in the lesson, handouts that are essentially detailed procedures that replicate the workflow and processes overviewed in the videos. They include simulations. So these are interactive elements where staff can actually click through different processes and procedures without having to go into the client to do it. So staff are asked to click in different places to proceed through these activities. Then they also include guided activities, which are hands-on, essentially worksheets that staff use to walk through different tasks in the actual Polaris interface. Each course ends with an end-of-unit quiz. That way CCS can track completion rates and just like gauge our staff absorbing the key concepts that are reviewed in the lesson. I'm going ahead, going too fast. Any questions on training? So again, the URL is very easy to remember. It's just training.ccslib.org. We are constantly revising and updating the training based on the feedback that we receive. So if you do happen to go poke around, we'd love to hear your thoughts and what you think. So you can email any of your feedback to help@ccslib.org and we'll take a look and make modifications. We created a very large amount of training in a short amount of time. So we plan to up the offerings that we do have here. So if you have suggestions for additional training courses, we'd love to hear those as well. Okay, awesome. Please use training.ccslib.org. Its look will change over time as we work to redesign our website. So jumping into that, I wanted to provide a brief update on the CCS website redesign, which we have started working on this year. The CCS website redesign project comes out of feedback that we've received and also, you know, internally kind of frustrations that we've had of having so many different websites for staff to visit and find information on. So right now we have learning.ccslib.org, we have our normal website, now we have training.ccslib.org, and that's a lot of places for staff to look for the information that we need. So we have embarked in 2020 on a website redesign project. So what have we done so far on this? Our plan has changed a little bit due to COVID. In the spring, we were able, once libraries closed, we were able to switch our focus from user testing Power Pack to user test the CCS website and the learning portal. So Kathleen worked with a number of different staff across our libraries to conduct user testing. And many of you here participated in this, so thank you for volunteering your time to help us on this project. We sent out a survey in CCS News gathering your thoughts on our current website interfaces, and then we asked for volunteers to participate in both card testing and usability testing. So we had 37 members engage in our card sort activity. And that activity essentially asked staff to sort different topics into broad categories. And we'll use the results we gathered from that activity to set up our menu structure for our new website interface. So that was really helpful and very interesting to look at the results as well. And then we had 5 staff participate in usability testing. So the usability testing took about an hour, and Kathleen walked staff, our volunteers, through various tasks to complete in the CCS website and the learning portal, and then recorded instances in which they were not able to successfully achieve the tasks that they were given. That was very interesting and enlightening, but not surprising. So we'll use the data gathered from these different user testing opportunities to, again, inform and guide our website redesign, which our next step would be this fall to release our RFP. It's already drafted and written. However, we are waiting for the final version of L2 to be released before we share our RFP and put it out there into the world. We are hoping to be able to use L2 to integrate login information to our website. So right now, I think all of you know, we have a shared username and password that we use, but we'd prefer moving forward that staff have individual logins that they'd use. And we've heard from Rails that they believe that we can use L2 integration to allow that functionality. So we're excited to see what that would look like. So once the RFP is released, again, we'll wait for those responses to the RFP come in before we select our final vendor. We had initially planned for the website to be released early 2021, January or February. However, because of COVID, we've had to push back our timeline a bit. So we'd anticipate that the new website would be released sometime in spring 2021. And we're very excited and cannot wait. So any questions about that?
Deborah, does this project include also looking at like the portal and the catalogers wiki and thinking about if certain types of information would be better one place or another, or is it focused on the website?
Yes, it does include the portal and the training interface and our regular website. At this time, we haven't discussed whether the wiki should or could be incorporated into the website redesign. So we may need to gather some feedback from this group on what your preference would be for that. But at this time, we're just planning on the main CCS website, the learning portal, and then our new training interface to be integrated. The wiki's a kind of a different beast, and it has a lot of information there. So we'll potentially look at that, but at this time, it's not in our original plan. But if we need to reach out and gather feedback, we will absolutely contact this group because you're our experts.
Okay, and Karen also asked how L2 would integrate with the CCS website. Could you talk about that a little bit?
I am not an IT expert. However, I believe that there will be an API set up that will allow us to use your L2 login to log into the CCS website. So we're waiting again for the new L2 redesign to finish so we can grab all of the specs from the Rails staff that we'd need to put in our RFP. So essentially you'd log into the CCS website with your L2 login. That way you don't have to have 2 accounts.
Okay.
Ooh, I see Rachel talking, but make sure you're muted.
It would be like how you could use Facebook or Google accounts to log into the different websites. You could use it to log into.
Yeah, that's a good example. We want to try to minimize the number of logins that staff have to use across the different websites that they use. But we also recognize that having the same username and password for the CCS website for multiple years is probably not very secure. So we'd prefer to move to some sort of individual login.
Okay, we also had a question about the migration. Would the training database be available over that weekend?
It will be. We will. So production will be down likely Friday night around 9:30 p.m. Or very early before libraries open on Saturday. However, the training database will be up and running so that staff can use the training database to check patron accounts. We will, though, disable certain functionalities in training to minimize the risk that staff inadvertently enter a transaction into the training database rather than Polaris offline. So in previous migrations, we've disabled check-in function and placing hold abilities. So we will likely do the same thing for this upcoming migration. But you can still use training to check patron accounts, to do testing, to do, whatever you may need to do that weekend.
Okay. And also, I assume like previous migrations with new libraries, we should expect a lot of duplicate bib records, and those will be cleaned up in the coming months.
Yep, that is always the case, is that Innovative's deduplication process is cannot be customized. So what happens is that records that cannot properly match based on certain fields, which we've never quite gotten a complete list from Innovative on the fields their process looks at. However, there will be a number of duplicate records. Library staff, you can merge them as you encounter them, and CCS will do a concentrated effort. As usual, we'll spend many weeks and many hours deduping the records in the database that we find. So we may ask for volunteers depending on the scale of the duplicate records. So you can look for that to the CATS listserv if we need additional help.
Okay, I think that's it for questions. Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome.
And there came up a question in chat for Rachel about the diacritics. If you want to talk about that, Rachel?
Yes, we have several diacritics questions that are received. So the first one was, if you're editing bib records in Polaris, do you have to use the Polaris diacritics menu, or can you use the Windows character map or the Windows International Keyboard? I recommend using the Polaris diacritics menu to ensure it will display properly in the pack. However, I have not actually tried using the character map or the international keyboard, so feel free to experiment with that if you want to. And I'm not sure what effect that will have on how characters will display in the pack. We did receive another question on what is the workaround if we are only using the Z3950 through the client and do not plan to use the Connexion client. As I mentioned in the presentation, one option is the Z3950 connection to the Library of Congress UTF-8 database. However, if you don't find a record in that, you can try using the Z3950 connection to OCLC and then check to see if the characters will all display properly. If they don't display properly, then feel free to send a request to the help desk, and someone at CCS can help you load the record through exporting it from Connexion.
Okay, thank you. Virginia, you're up next.
Okay. Where am I? I guess I'm not muted. I didn't make a fancy PowerPoint or anything like that. Should I be shown? I don't know. Well, whatever. I just see Jamie. That's right. I really make a PowerPoint because I'm so used to not having to do anything left for our regular meetings. So anyway, just a couple reminders. If you see a record, a big record, if you see a GSF-AD and LCGFT record, basically the same records, same headings, please delete the GSF-AD, like good old mystery fiction and adventure fiction and things like that. We're using LCGFT at most of the time, whenever possible. And there's a list in the wiki for the ones that we're using as locals. Speaking of local headings, as a big project during the COVID time when I'm at home, I've been doing working on your locals. I've been making local records. Bob wrote a big spreadsheet of all the local records with local headings, and I've been editing them. There was over 1,200, and I think I've done about a third of them. Let's see. There was talk about the RDA toolkit earlier today, the beta version. You can sign on. You can use your regular. Just want a reminder. You can sign on using your regular CCS login to get to the regular RD toolkit, and then you can get into the beta version that way. As speaking of locals, we had some discussion at Scrap earlier days with the local practices, including for a long time we had a local practice of having a 655 as a foreign language heading, like Russian language materials or Spanish language materials. It was decided because they were local headings, they were not used anymore. So I did delete many of them. So please remember, delete. I don't think I've ever finished deleting the Russians headings, but I know I did all the Spanish and things like that. So please delete as many as when you see the heading, like a 655 or maybe a 650 that says Spanish language materials, please delete them. I try to remember to go back and forth and look at them. The other headings to delete, but they seem to come back. They seem to populate by themselves. So please repopulate themselves. So please remember to do that. Delete that. And I think that's about all. If anybody else has questions. One other thing, there was talk about Regency fiction and novels and manners. There used to be in novels and manners authority record, there was a C reference to Regency fiction. It was a C reference. I changed that to make it a C also. So please look at your browse heading under like novels and manners and see how that looks. I think it looks kind of a handy duty compromise to have, so we can have both headings there. Any questions? That's my report.
I don't see any questions. Thank you, Virginia.
Sure.
We did have one question about the records from Library of Congress. Does that mean we no longer need OCLC numbers in our final bib records? No, the Library of Congress records should all have OCLC numbers in them, but if it doesn't for some reason, then you should just import the record from OCLC. And again, check to see if the characters display properly. If they don't and you need assistance with loading the record, feel free to contact the help desk.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Up next, Brad Peterson from Cary will share some cataloging reminders. Brad?
All right, can you guys hear me?
It's really soft for me.
How about that? Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. All right, so at the scrap meeting, we talked about having some cataloging reminder for practices. So I came up with a couple of items and worked with Jamie and Rachel on them. So for the first one is in the leader, the 008 field. The audience, we only use 4 fields. We use general, adult, adolescent, and juvenile. And usually in juvenile, there's other ones selected like pre-adolescent or primary, but we only use the J for them. And there's on the wiki, there is a page about the target audience that goes into more detail.
Hey, Brad?
Yeah?
If it's possible, could you speak up just a little bit? Or
yeah, sorry. Yeah, there's a page on the wiki for the target audience information if anyone needs further explanation on what we use in CCS. The other one is literary form, another page on the wiki. We should be using fiction instead of F for novels and nonfiction. And I have been noticing lately, I don't know why it's been happening, if it's coming from OCLC or not, but there have been ones that have been selective fiction and they're not fiction and vice versa. So that's one thing one note. And that's the most part for that. 300 line for the dimensions for measuring, round up to the nearest centimeter, not down. So if it's 23.5, it's 24. And make sure you actually check the page numbers, because I have found a couple lately where the last page isn't actually the one that's included on the record. What else did I have? select file, I don't know, there's discussion if we need to bother with deleting the L because the page is out of date on the wiki because we're not using Symfony anymore. So I don't know, Rachel, is that important or not?
We'll need to talk about it at scrap. I'm not sure if that's important.
Okay, so maybe not worry about that one right now. Delete 938s and 948s when importing records, and there's a macro that John has to do that, I believe. Right, Jamie? Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that is correct. Yeah, John
Okay.
will delete the 938.
Don't use AC, the children's genre headings. Jamie made a note of that. I don't know if he wants to elaborate on that anymore.
Yeah, the main example for this is not to use 650 fantasy. Use the LCGST fantasy fiction instead for all material.
Okay, and the only other one I have is make sure to try to include at least one 655 term for fiction and if possible for nonfiction.
Okay, thank you, Brad. And Virginia also commented in the chat that she goes through periodically every other month or so and changes some of those incorrect audience codes that have snuck in or blanks. All right. Any questions on anything Brad just shared? And we will try to send out a document listing some of these things in the next week. We'll email that out to the list. Okay, we will move to our technical services open discussion. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, comments about tech services? Kind of an open forum. Lynn, yes, if you'd like to unmute.
Hi, actually, it's kind of a question and then maybe a call for help for the Idea Lab potentially. We at Displays have been experimenting with parent and child item records. Does everybody know what those are? Or not know what those are? Let me know. Okay.
Nobody uses them currently in CCS. I mean, I know Rachel was looking at it probably with Jeff Plain, but I don't think anybody else uses them currently.
Okay, we're not using them currently either because they don't work the way we hoped they would. So if you think about the Midwest Tape binge boxes, if they worked the way we hoped they would have, we would have been able to link all, say, the 4 movies in the binge box. We would have been able to link those items to the original film bib records. And so when you looked up Footloose, you would get as one of the items the binge box. That's nice and all, and it's great because it saves us time with cataloging, but it's also nice because not only would they know that we have the binge box with that movie in it, but they'd also know whether it was available or not, or whether it was checked out. Except that when you check in or check out or change the status of a parent record, the child records don't change. You have to do them all individually. So that doesn't really work for those. And when John and I were talking, we kind of didn't understand why there couldn't just be like an opt-in, like a toggle that says, yes, I want them all to work together when I'm changing the status, or no, leave them separate. And so I was considering putting in an Idea Lab ticket, but I know, we all know how that works. I'm looking for support. How's that? because I think that is a really useful tool for discovery of, for things like binge boxes and other kits where we're taking materials that might be separate, might be out there in the library elsewhere, and putting them in one place. Another example are our discovery kits, our STEAM kits that we include books in. If you're looking up DK robots, you'll know that it's in the STEAM kit as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I would
Okay.
vote for that idea lab idea. I think if parent-child could work that way, where you check out the parent item and it checks out all the child items, people would actually use it.
Right.
And right now it's pretty unusable as it works now. So I don't know why Innovative designed it that way. I'm wondering if it was possibly like a development request from a specific library. So this functionality filled a specific need for a specific library or library system, and they paid Innovative to develop it, but like it doesn't work for anyone else. So if you would submit that to the Idea Lab and share it with the CATS listserv, I think you'd get, at least from CCS, some good support behind that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
We have 2 hands raised. Kathy?
Yeah, I would fully support that idea as well, because our children's services, they do want to create binge boxes with extra copies of things they've had in storage forever. And I was trying to think of how can we get discoverability, like you were, from the item into the binge box, from the binge box to the item. And so I would definitely support what you'd want to put out there on the Idea Lab. But do you think if the item itself at the item level was marked as unavailable, that it would matter if the item itself checked out with the binge box? Because I'm trying to think from what you said, how I could still make this work without having to create countless bib records for every binge box relating with every item specifically going into that binge box. You know, just that whole 9 yards with that. Or, you know, how do we make this work from a circulation standpoint? Do they check out every item in the binge box with the binge box? You know, like circulating a bag?
As it stands now, if we used parent and child item records, yes, that is how it would work. That is why we don't use those. That's why I want to like ask them to fix it.
Yeah, because the other place I would dearly love to use something like this is our genealogy society once upon a time came in and pulled original items out of our collection that were theirs, gave us back photocopies of those items, but bound half a dozen of them together so they could save money in bindery costs. And I had perfectly good OCLC records for every one of the individual items, but this happened under Symphony, having to go ahead then and try to recreate this massive item that describes 5 or 6 different things. There's other things that that my time should be used for rather than redoing all of this work. So yeah, I've got a lot of things I'd like to use it for, but I'm disappointed that it's not working well.
John?
I emailed the Hammermeister at Pinnacle and asked him about parent-child items. And he said, I've been in calls with Innovative Support where they have acknowledged that the functionality just isn't quite there. Because of these limitations, I've yet to come up with a good use for this feature, so I've instructed my libraries to ignore it. So while Idea Lab is great, I feel like we could end around that and go right to support, because it sounds like it's something that's not working rather than a brand new idea. Because I can't figure out any reason why you would want that if the status didn't cascade.
I do think that innovative, if we went to support, because it's not broken, it just isn't helpful to anyone, they would tell us to submit an Idea Lab request or pay for an enhancement. Though they're not taking enhancement requests right now, so all development is being channeled or funneled through the Idea Lab. So I do think that the Idea Lab idea is our best bet for potentially making changes to the functionality. I mean, it does kind of stink that Innovative has acknowledged it's not helpful or useful, but I believe it's working how they designed it to, that just was potentially designed poorly.
Okay.
So when, if it worked as you want it to, when you check out the main item, somebody would still have to, it would check out everything all at once. You'd still have to go through and make sure everything was there, right, when it checked out? Or would you just assume all the items were in there? Because it seems like you might run into things where, oh, everything got checked out at once, but then they take it home and one or two things were actually not in the bag. And so then they come out and we, where are these items?
We would assume from check-in that they would be there. For instance, if we have kits that like the kits we have are actually for kids are zip tied, not to keep them from stealing stuff from here, but really just so kids don't choke on small pieces. But the effect is kind of the same. I mean, they've been checked by our clerks, everything's there. They get zip tied and then they go up onto the floor. So they know when they're checking it out that everything's there. In the same way they know that anything they check out from us that has multiple pieces is there, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I think libraries oftentimes use the free text block field to put a note, for example, like check for 10 pieces or 10 parts. So I would assume that with these, you'd add some sort of free text block to the parent item that would pop up at the time of checkout or check-in saying to check for X number of pieces. I know not everybody uses that free text block field for that, but a number do. So that might be a good workaround for checking contents, if Innovative were to fix this situation.
Karen commented that their circulation department checks them in to make sure everything listed on the container was there and then calls patrons if they're missing anything.
I don't know how it would work if when we start our youth created binge boxes, but I know that when our circ department checks out our television series and our video games, and those are housed behind the desk, as they check them out, they leaf through to in front of the patron to make, so the patron knows all the discs are there, that the entire game is there, including whatever instruction booklets, guides, because they get tired of being told, oh, it was missing that when I checked it out. Well, they're checked when they get checked out. They're checked when they get checked in. Things don't vanish somehow out of the item from the point it's checked out and handed to the patron. So, like I said, I don't know how that would work with the binge boxes, but the struggle's real. Lynn, I really like your idea of the zip tie so that it's, they know that everything's there because it's been sealed, so to speak.
Okay.
We do have one question about checking items in with self-checkout. So the binge boxes or kits would not be able to be checked out with self-checkout then? So if they're zip tied, the department has to check them out manually.
Not at our location, but I guess at some locations, yes. We're talking about like a really useful box, which a big old box with the kit inside of it. We zip tie them so that little kids on the second floor don't open up the marbles and magnets, steam kits, and swallow them. The parents cut the zip ties off when they take it home to play with them.
For our STEM kits and for binge boxes, there's only one barcode, so they can still be checked out at self-checkout. What I tried with the binge boxes was to add additional items for each movie, but not add a barcode.
So
An item with a blank barcode.
So the Idea Lab thing we were talking about, was that even apply to your bags then? If there's only one barcode, there's only one item record, is that right?
It could apply because we could link the books that are included, and even some of the toys that we have included that other libraries circulate separately. We could link those records to that kit.
So some kits do have barcoded items included.
They're not barcoded right now because we can't.
Oh, but if this were implemented, then you would barcode the item.
We would, no, we would do it just.
We would add items without barcodes.
Child items, yeah. So that we could link to the actual record of the items themselves.
The child items are there for discovery in the catalog. They're not really for search reasons, although you will get multiple search stats, I think. It's just an added bonus. But it's really so that if you search for a movie, it'll say we have the movie and we also have the movie in this binge box. And it'll say whether it's in or not.
So items can be checked out without barcode, right?
Right. But for the binge box, it's in an alpha case. You just check it out like anything else. The child items without barcodes don't really affect search.
Yeah, I don't know if you can have a child item checked out to an account without a barcode. So we need to do some testing on that. I'm not quite sure. That'd be probably a functionality thing that Innovative would want some clarification on in the Idea Lab post. I don't know if Polaris can actually check out the parent item, check out child or subordinate items that don't have a barcode.
It shouldn't matter because it has an item ID, but then I'm expecting it to work correctly and it isn't. So
yeah, it might be possible that they could build something that wouldn't require a barcode, but that's probably something we could. It's like small potatoes. Maybe we could follow up with Innovative. Lynn, if you were to submit the Idea Lab post, you can note that your preference would be you wouldn't have to barcode the child items, and would like the functionality to still work the way you want it.
Ideally, the child items would have a status of checked out, but they wouldn't be checked out to patrons. Just the parent item. Again, this is my world. I don't know what Polaris has in mind.
Well, John, it's not necessarily going to be just your world because the items that I'm looking at for my binge box are items that we have fully cataloged, item barcodes are currently checked out to storage, and they want to stick them in a binge box so that they can circulate them and have, I'm not sure how they're going to group them, if it would be like themes like animated stuff or educational or how they're going to do that. But all I know is I'm going to be getting a box with information with fully cataloged items. And if I could have the parent-child work where if they check out the parent barcode and it'll cascade check out the item barcodes, I'd like it to work that way because of the situation I have. But maybe if we're putting something in Idea Lab, we need to posit a couple of different scenarios based on what our needs are going to be. Because, yeah, I mean, I can see that maybe not having a barcode on a child item would be something that would be great, but still have that status cascade. But if the barcode field is filled in, it really shouldn't make that much difference in having the checkout cascade that status.
Kathy, I think you and I are on the same page on this. We're just slightly different materials, but
Yeah,
you could take your barcodes off or cross them out or something. Whatever.
Well, at this point, I would prefer not to take the barcodes off the items because like when we're dealing with acquisitions things, our items, we have items out there without barcodes. They're out there, holds can be placed on them, we can change statuses on them. The only thing we can't physically do is check them out or check them in. So I mean, so in my mind, I don't see what some of the difficulties would be, but again, Polaris may have different means on how they do that. So anyway, yeah, I think we are on the same page, John. I just think our scenarios are going to be different when we're actually putting these together.
So John or Kathy or whoever's most interested, if you'd like to maybe draft something for Idea Lab and you could send it out to the catch list for feedback, maybe to see if all our bases are covered or can be covered in one idea. Yeah.
John, I'll defer to you because you're farther ahead than I am. Right now, this is just, we've got the boxes in that they're going to be using when they create the binge boxes, but our youth department is being very kind to our tech services department because like all of you, we've recently had everything that was ordered pre-pandemic and through the pandemic delivered in, and we are still cataloging madly and furiously and processing madly and furiously just to get those new materials out rather than trying to add into the mix.
Okay, I will probably defer to Lynn too, but.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I will, I'll send a draft out once I have something that seems like it makes sense. And then if y'all can chime in and help, that would be great.
Okay. Anything else? Questions, comments?
I don't think there are any more questions.
Okay, is there any other business? Does anybody have any announcements, news you'd like to share? Anything else before we wrap up? Okay, we're through everything, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Great job, Jamie. You did a good first meeting.